Welcome students to another lecture in this series. Let's continue with the chapter with the unit 2 that we started in the previous video lecture. We are studying the heads of income, of which we are studying the first, that is income from salary. Under this, we tried and understand the meaning of term salary, the basis of charge, the rules which govern salary, then further the additional uh, incentives received by the employees, like allowances, perquisites. We started with allowances and studied the details of HRA. Let's continue with the second category, the prescribed allowances. In this, we have certain types. First, we have special allowances. We have traveling allowance, daily allowance, conveyance allowance, helper allowance, academic allowance, uniform allowance. These allowances are exempt of the minimum of the two amounts, either the actual amount, the actual allowance received, or the actual amount spent for the purpose of the duty of office or employment, the real amount spent. Okay. Let us see the second one, that is personal allowances. These allowances are granted to meet the personal expenses, and these are of two types. The first is that they are exempted to the extent of the amount which is received or the limit which is specified, whichever is less. Under this, we have the first, that is children education allowance. It is having a limit of rupees 100 per month per child, up to a maximum of 2 children, or the actual amount which is received, whichever is less. Then we have hostel expenditure allowance, which is 300 per month per child, up to a maximum of 2 children, or the next, that is the actual amount which is received, whichever is less. Then the third category is the tribal area or scheduled area or agency area allowance. When you are posted to such areas, then you get this allowance from the employer, and that is rupees 200 per month, the actual amount received, or whichever is less. Special compensatory hilly area allowance or high altitude allowance, because it is difficult to live in the hilly areas. It varies from rupees 300 to rupees 7,000 per month, depends on the class of salary you belong to. Then we have border area, remote area allowance or disturbed area allowance. It varies from rupees 200 to rupees 1,300 per month. Again, differs from the various posts that you hold, the various categories you belong to. Then we have compensatory field area allowance. It is exempt to the extent of rupees 2,600 per month. Suppose if a person is receiving 300 as compensatory field area allowance, so he is not supposed to pay the tax for the 2,600. The rest 400 will be added to the taxable income. Then we have compensatory modified field area allowance. It is having a lesser limit, that is, it is exempt up to an extent of rupees 1,000 per month. Then we have transport allowance. It is exempt to the extent of rupees 800 per month. It is 1,600 instead of 800 if the employee is blind or orthopedically handicapped with disabilities of lower extremities. Then underground allowance. These are the things which is given to the people who work in the uncongenial, unnatural climate in underground mines, and it is exempt up to an extent of rupees 800 per month. Then we have high altitude, again uncongenial climate allowance, given to the members of the armed forces for altitude of 9,000 feet to 15,000 feet. It is 1,060 rupees per month. For our altitude above 15,000 feet, it is 1,600 per month, and it is the limit which is exempt from tax. The amount received may be different. The last two in this, special compensatory highly active field area allowance, which is granted to the members of armed forces only. which is exempt to the extent of rupees 4,200 per month. Island duty allowance. It is given to the members of the armed forces in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands or the Lakshadweep group of islands and is exempt to the extent of 3,250 rupees per month. The second category begins here, the allowance which is allowed to transport employees working in any transport system. It is given by the employer to the employee who is working in any transport system in order to meet his personal expenditure during his duty, which is performed in course of running of that particular transport company from one place to another, and the amount of exemption shall be 70% of such allowance or rupees 10,000 per month, whichever is less. Exemption under this shall be allowed only when the employee is not in receipt of daily allowances. If he is not receiving any daily allowances, then only he can take that exemption on the monthly allowances received by him. Let's move towards the next category that we talked about before also, entertainment allowance. It is the money paid to the employees in order to cover the cost of the meals and the other entertainment which is incurred while doing their job. So entertainment allowance in case of non-government employees is fully taxable, while deduction is allowed only to the government employees. So in case of entertainment allowance, the assessee is not entitled to any exemption, but he is entitled to a deduction under section 16 from the gross salary and up to a limit of minimum of the three cases. First is actual entertainment allowance which is received, or the 20% of his salary exclusive of any other allowance or benefit or perquisite, or maximum limit is rupees 5,000. So which is the least or minimum of these would be considered as exemption under the category of entertainment allowance. Then we have allowances which are fully taxable. DA, dearness allowance, I explained the meaning of this in the previous class, which is the allowance to meet the inflation level of a country in order to maintain your standard of living. Then city compensatory allowance is there, medical allowance, lunch allowance or tiffin allowance, non-practicing allowance, overtime allowance, warden allowance, servant allowance. Allowances exempt in case of a certain person. Means certain categories of employees are there where the allowances are exempted from tax. Allowance to citizen of India who is a government employee rendering services outside India, like ambassadors. Allowances to high court judges are also exempted. Sumptuary allowance to any high court or supreme court judge is also exempt. Now let us have a look to an example. X is a resident and an employee of a private company, furnishing the following particulars of his remuneration for a previous year 2014-15. Basic salary given here is rupees 28,000 per month. DA is 17,000 per month and 100% forms part of salary only. House rent allowance is rupees 3,000 per month. Children education allowance 500 per month. Hostel allowance rupees 800 per month. Transport allowance 1,200 per month. Entertainment allowance rupees 500 per month. He lives in the city of Delhi and has a single child staying in the hostel for studies. He pays a monthly rent of rupees 15,000 for his study. Let us see for his stay. Let us see the solution, how to calculate his taxable income. First of all, we will see his basic salary. Let us compare. Here you can see his basic salary is rupees 28,000 per month. So with that only I have marked it as 28,000 into 12, annual salary becomes 3,36,000. Then dearness allowance is given here as 17,000 per month and 100% of that forms part of the salary. For that purpose 17,000 into 12, so 2,04,000. Then comes house rent allowance. Here the actual is rupees 3,000 per month, so I have mentioned that only 3,000 into 12, that is 36,000. Now let us see the exemption, how that exemption is being calculated. I have given certain working notes here. DA is fully taxable, that we have discussed before as well. Then HRA. You know that you have three points for that. Whichever is the minimum is given as exemption. First is the actual HRA is received. In this case it is 36,000. Then we see rent paid minus the 10% of the salary. The rent paid is 15,000 per month because he is living in the city of Delhi. So 15,000 into 12 gives you 1,80,000. minus the 10% of the salary, from where we are bringing up the 10% of the salary by adding up these two amounts. It would be 5,40,000. So 5,40,000 from basic salary and dearness allowance. From there we are having this 54,000 as 10%. So subtracting these two, we are able to get 1,26,000. Then 50% of the salary means 5,40,000. 50% of 5,40,000. As he is living in Delhi, it would be 50%. Else, if it is not a metropolitan city, it is 40%. So as it is a metropolitan city, Delhi, it would be 50% only, 2,70,000. And these second and third amount is too high, 1,26,000 and 2,70,000. So as exemption, we will be considering this 36,000 only as exemption. So you may see that I have marked exemption as 36,000 in brackets. Okay, let's move further. Let us have a look to the question. We are done with basic salary, we are done with DA, we are done with house rent allowance. Let us move further. Let us see the children education allowance, that is rupees 500 per month. So I have marked here education allowance 500 into 12, that is 6,000. Now let us see the exemption. How we will see the exemption? Let us go to the working notes. The children education allowance is exempt for rupees 100 per month. You can see that in the previous slides I have mentioned that per child and up to a maximum of 2 children, but he is having only 1 child, so he is receiving that. Since rupees 500 is only he has received only 500, so rupees 100 is exempt. In all, he has received 500 only. So with that limit, we can see rupees 100 is exempt. So 100 into 12, 1200 rupees would get exempted. The rest 400 would be taxable for him. The next, after education allowance, we do have the hostel allowance, that is rupees 800 per month. Let us see. After this, we have marked the hostel allowance of 800 into 12, that is 9,600. Now let us see the exemption, that what percentage of that particular allowance is exempted. For hostel allowance, it is exempt for rupees 300 per child, up to a maximum of 2 children, or the actual amount received, whichever is less. Because he is receiving 800, so that amount, actual amount received is more, so obviously 300 would get exempted. So here we have marked that hostel allowance is 800 into 12, that is the actual amount that he has received, but the exemption maximum is like 300 into 12, whichever is less we have to take, so we have taken 300 here as exemption. So 300 into 12, that is 3,600 will get exempted. Let's move to the next allowance. After hostel allowance, we can see the transport allowance here, that is 1,200 rupees per month. Let us see. I have marked this 1200 into 12, that is 14,400 for the whole year. Now let us see the exemption, how it goes with the exemption. The transport allowance is exempt up to rupees 800 per month. I have talked about this in the previous slides. You can learn it from there, that how much part is exempted. So he is getting 800 obviously, so we will be exempting that limit only of 800 as exemption. So 800 into 12 will get exempted from tax. That is, out of 14,400 you can subtract 9,600 and can go for that. Then comes entertainment allowance, the last part. After transport allowance, we have entertainment allowance of rupees 5,000 per month. So I have marked that 500 per month. Entertainment allowance of rupees 500 into 12, 6,000 is marked. And in case of deduction on account of entertainment allowance is not allowed, because he is a government employee. If he is a non-government employee, then he may have that. And gross salary, we know, is the total of all after exemptions that we have marked in brackets, and income under the head salary is the gross salary after deducting all the deductions on account of entertainment allowance. But here, in case of Mr. X, it is not allowed because he is a government employee. So there are no deductions marked for this. So after calculating all these amounts, we are able to see the gross salary, that is 5,48,640, and no deduction on account of entertainment allowance is given because he is a government employee. So his income under the head salary comes out to be 5,48,640, and this amount would go to taxation, and it is his taxable salary from this particular head. I hope this question is very clear to all. If you face any problem with it, you may write to me. Till then, thank you so much. Take care. Study well.